What's up, nerds? What are we doing? Well, this month, what month is it? It just turned November 2022, and we're talking about Magic: The Gathering Arena. And we've recently gotten into this game, and we've been playing Standard Ranked, and we finally got up to Mythic. Best of one, and we did that with Mono Red. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go through what that deck list is, what it looked like, how we did it, and yeah, that's pretty much all we're going to do in this video. So if you're not into that, you might as well hop off. But any questions, drop them in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Let's get into it. So I'm just going to open up the app, and I'll be putting some screenshots on the video as well. All right, so into the deck list. So starting from the bottom, we're gonna look at our lands. So on a 60 card deck, we actually only run 21 lands. We're low to the ground, and I've honestly went back and forth on this a lot. I went as low as I think 19 or 20, and I just felt like too sparse. I definitely wanna hit some of my 3 drops at least. I'm usually not winning if I'm not dropping my 4 drops. And I need 5 for my sweepers if they're going wide and the game's still going long, especially against those white decks. 21 feels real good. That's 20 mountains and 1 Sokenzan. And actually, I'm working on building this deck into paper. And I actually, lucky enough, I cracked a Sokenzan in one of my Kamigawa packs. So that's cool. As we're sleeving that up, getting that ready for the paper version of this. But that's why we're looking for lands. 21. Now we'll go from 5 converted mana cost down to 1. But we'll do these X's first. So we have a Shivan Devastator. We're running 1 right now, but I really like that because there's a lot of versatility in the Shivan Devastator coming in at X cost mana. You know, if your opening hands are shitty and you're on your first mulligan, second mulligan, and you have a Shivan Devastator, okay. Usually this pairs pretty well early game, especially with Kumano. We'll talk about Kumano faces Kakazan a little later. But on the second step of the Kumano, you get to put in the Shivan Devastator. Now it's coming in, you know, say turn 2 as a 2/2. So, you know, it was cheap for you, and your opponent's also not as inclined to shoot it down, spend their removal spell on the 2/2 flyer. I run a lot of Phoenix Chicks, and my Kakazan, I think, is at 4 of that enchantment, the Kumano Kakazan. I'm at 4 with those. So the Phoenix Chicks and the Shivan Devastator, when it's running on the small side, that can be a lot to deal with in the air, barring any sweeping cards that they're played. On the bigger end, you know, that honestly is my finishing move a lot. You know, turn 6, 5 mana. I have some methods of generating treasure tokens as well, which, you know, I can bank those, especially off of a turn 4 that was removed, Atsushi. I think that's how you say that. Let me check here. Yeah, it's Atsushi. An Atsushi, that dragon from Kamigawa, you know, you have 2 options when it dies, and you can elect to do the 3 treasures with Shivan Devastator in hand. Boom. You're sending out a big old 6/6 dragon with haste in the air. Ooh, and you know, I do run some trample spells, although it's not a big presence in this deck, but ever so often, and it's actually the next spell we're going to talk about, Lunar Frenzy. I only run 1 of them, and you know, this deck you'll realize it's not like the boring, whatever they call them, net decks, meta decks, where, you know, you're running typically 4 of a bunch of different things and 3 of a bunch of different things. I really like variety in my decks, so I wanted to see if getting to Mythic was possible with some variety. So I'm running a lot of 1-ofs, just because I like the uniqueness of having more 1-ofs in the deck that could still deliver consistency and application in variety situations. Lunar Frenzy being one of them. Honestly, there are plenty of times I just use it to give it trample. So it's a 1 red to give a creature trample and first strike. So, you know, that can honestly blow through a lot of unsuspecting blockers, especially when I'm having just 1 red mana open. They're probably thinking, you know, what can they really have? I think this is a pretty safe block here on maybe, you know, if they want to trade a creature that's annoying. And they're usually more inclined for those trades late game when their life is down and I'm still up. You know, turn 4 or 5, they're usually sitting at under 10. So Lunar Frenzy I've liked for that reason as well. In addition to if they have struggled to get established, because if you're not, you know, playing a quick mid game of getting established, getting creatures on the board to start being blockers, I will run through your 1 blocker with Lunar Frenzy, especially if it's a small fry. The chump blocks are a good way for you to get your damage in. You know, they're putting a 1/1 on your creatures. You can really overwhelm that 1/1 with suddenly trample, and you're giving them buff on whatever their power was. So that's why Lunar Frenzy's in there. that is it for the X manas. Now we're into our 5-drops, and the first one is a creature, Urabrask Heretic Praetor. Legendary. So this card was cool to me, and it was a more recent edition. I think I put this in when I was still like Diamond 2, Diamond 1, as I was tweaking the deck, excuse me. And I think I was just happenstance across this card. I thought it was cool. I wanted to see if it could work, and it generally does fine. It's fun pressure when they have this card on the field because of the passive ability of basically they're exiling a card instead of drawing. So their hand size is not growing anymore outside of specific card abilities. I do find that it actually reads a lot better than it actually plays. Oftentimes they exile land, they're just going to play that land. They exile a creature when they were top decking, they're just going to play that creature. So by the time this card comes in, that passive ability, I'm going to say actually as I'm recalling it, it's not as good as it reads, but it is a 4/4 haster, so you know, assuming I have a decent spread of creatures out there on the battlefield already, this is a fine addition. Excuse the yawn. And it also gains me an extra card draw. So honestly, that passive ability plays much better. On to our next 5-drop, the Burn Down the Houses. So this is critical. Burn Down the House. As far as I'm aware, one of the only sweepers in mono red. I went between running 3 and maybe even running 1, and 2 really feels good. 3 feels too many. I'm getting it too early in the game. You know, if I see 1 early game, that's fine, but as soon as I start to have 2 in hand, I get really annoyed with how much that's blocking me out. A lot of versatility in playing this card. You can play it as a sweeper. You can play it in main phase 2 after, you know, they had a big blocker take damage, and now you're able to sweep the board. I use it like that a lot, and also a finisher. The 3 Devils. Oh man, that has won me so many games, and it will win you many games. So I look forward to getting that card, start playing that in paper. Now to the 4-drops. So Thundering Raiju. Thundering Raiju is a hasty spirit creature, with a beautiful ability. I really enjoy this ability. This deck has a little bit of a sub-theme of modified creatures, a little bit. And this is one of the key components of that sub-theme, is this card here. So it comes in as a 3/3, but when you attack with this creature, you drop a 1/1 counter on target creature I control, and then you deal X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of modified creatures I control, other than Thundering Raiju. So you have a couple of different options. So, you know, honestly, that is my finishing move sometimes. You know, like I said, my 4th, 5th, 6th turn, that's usually when they're whittled down to a few little damage. And through Kumano Kakazan, and I have some equipped spells, those are already creatures that are equipped, and then this card equips another creature if you have another unequipped creature, or it can self-buff to get over a lot of those other 3 power creatures on the other side of the field to stay alive for the next turn, require a removal spell. Oftentimes this does. This is one of my cards that is oftentimes removed immediately next turn once I resolved it. But yes, love this card. Would play more of these cards. Honestly, some of the numbers of these cards I've played, like I said, I enjoy the uniqueness, but honestly, that has come from not having more than just 1 copy on Arena. So we've made it work, and this is why we're talking about it. Our next 4-drop, we have Jaxis, the Troublemaker. This one is a little, I'm a little leery on. This is close to a cut for me, but it was still in the deck by the time we crossed the finish line into Mythic. So we'll talk about it. So it's a 4-drop, and when it's a 4-drop, it has the ability of red and tap, and I discard a card, and I can create a token that's a copy of another target creature I control, and that token is haste, and when it dies, I draw a card, and I have to sacrifice it at end step. And I can only do that as a sorcery. But I also have the option of blitzing Jaxis for 1 and a red, and it's a 2/3. So I've played this both ways. I like the ability for just giving me some more attacking bodies of other big creatures I have. So, you know, I haven't had too much exposure with that ability yet, but I do tend to play it more as the blitz side of things if I'm just looking for another attacker to deal 2 damage, and also the benefit of drawing me a card when it costs me 2 mana. I honestly probably play it a little more like that. I feel like the deck is dry on 2-drop creatures, so honestly this is a 2-drop creature that I'm knowing is not going to do more than get me a card back and also deal 2 damage. So a little bit of like a burn spell with the minor inefficiency. Just as the burn spell, but you get the benefit of a card. So, you know, to me it's a good trade. So that's why Jaxus is existing still in this deck. Up next is Creepy Puppeteer. I really enjoy Creepy Puppeteer, honestly, because my board doesn't end up going wide. You know, very rarely am I too wide. You know, as soon as Squee comes out, Squee shot out next turn. A lot of key creatures in this deck don't live for more than the turn that they were brought out. So Creepy Puppeteer can really help with a lot of the lower creatures, the Phoenix Chick, the Rabbit Battery, because the passive ability here is when you're attacking with exactly one other creature, base power is 4/3. That's also really nice on the modified theme where, you know, the 1/1 counters from Kumano Kakazan or Thundering Raiju, that's going to bump them up to 5/4 or more. So I've really enjoyed Creepy Puppeteer. Honestly, I think I never see anyone play this card, but I really enjoy Creepy Puppeteer. So moving on. Atsushi, the Blazing Sky. I think this is the most expensive card. No, I'm wrong. This is the second most expensive. Well, depending on what version you get. If you get borderless on this, you could pay a pretty penny in paper for this card. So I will not be getting borderless. Maybe if I win a tournament and I'll reward myself with upgrading, but no, not for paper. But anyway, let's talk about this card. So this card, it's one of the few cards that don't come in with haste, but I have some other ways to give it haste. You know, we have the 3-drop from Midnight Hunt that gives another creature haste at the beginning of combat. We have Rabbit Battery, which requires another open mana, so it's not a turn 4 option. Turn 5 and more, though, you have that option. But Atsushi, when it dies, and honestly, I'm counting on this card to get shot down because 4/4 in the air with Trample, that's immediately asking for removal. Again, one of the creatures that's getting off the board right away. I get the option to exile 2 cards. I can play until the end of next turn, or 3 treasure tokens. 3 treasure tokens, I don't use that option a lot unless I have Shivan Devastator in my hand. And you can always, you know, if you're on the other side of me playing, you would always know I have Shivan Devastator because I'm choosing the 3 treasure tokens. I'm usually fine with mana. Everything's cheap. So if I'm able to hit this, you know, 4 mana, I'm pretty okay. I'm usually doing additional options, other angles, looking for the last 2 burn spells I might need to deal the damage to the face. So I run 2 copies of Atsushi, and that's why. It's very critical to this strategy, I would say. I would say relatively. That's why we're seeing 2 copies instead of the usual 1. We had Squee, which Squee was added in because I actually popped the Squee in my Dominaria Sealed that I have. I have the showcase version. Very nice, very nice. So that's going to be in the deck. So I thought, hey, why don't we try and throw it in on the digital? And it's been fine. I would say it doesn't usually, it's weak as a 2/2, so it's really nice on turn 3 when I played a turn 2 Kumano Kakazan coming in at a 3/3, because Squee works so much better as a 3/3. But the problem with that is you're asking for it to be removed. When it's just a 2/2, they could usually front the blocker that's on it, that's threatening a trade, and I don't have a way of ensuring Squee survives, and I'm just getting the 1/1 out of it. It's not that good. It's not close to being cut because it applies pressure. And I enjoy the haste. I love haste. It's one of my favorite mechanics in this mono red deck. But, you know, it's okay. Doesn't develop me too much of a board presence, but the chump blockers are appreciated, so that's what they're usually there for. Moving on, Reckless Stormseeker. So this card gets the #1 spot for cards that get removed the turn after you play them. People hate this card because you could give any other creature haste. The most common way this card is played on turn 3, gives itself haste, deals 3, their next turn, it's gone. But it was nice while I had it. And usually I could also use it to buff creatures in the air in the later turns if we're just trying to finish them off, you know, get that damage through. Very nice in the late game when we're top decking and sometimes we're holding back, not playing cards, transitions into nighttime. You get +2 and trample and haste. That games where I get to use that, usually that's game. So we run 2 copies of Reckless Stormseeker because that is critical to the strategy. Our only Planeswalker in the deck, and I will say that I did try Jaya, Fiery Negotiator, and I just felt it felt like a bit much at the 4-drop spot. You know, with I have Jaya sleeved up because I don't have Chandra. And I like Jaya, and I want to give Jaya a chance, but she doesn't play well at a 4-drop with the strategy. She's beaten down too quickly. Chandra Dressed to Kill, which that is the #1 most expensive card in this deck in paper with the borderless art. I think it's like $30. And this is, by all means, this is a relatively cheap deck to build. Everything's pretty inexpensive. Chandra is great for the plus 2/1 abilities that both can work with the strategy. One of them is, you know, you get a red mana. And honestly, I sometimes do turn 3 Chandra Dress to Kill and Rabbit Battery, Phoenix Chick, or Ronin. More commonly Ronin, because he ends up back in my hand for turn 3. Usually those other two are already out in the field. And you're dealing a damage, so it contributes to the strategy. Just deal that damage, and puts her at a 4 for loyalty. And it could be to a Planeswalker. So, you know, when they have blockers, and, you know, they may have done a -2 ability immediately on the, who's the flasher? Oh yeah, Wandering Emperor. That usually plays well for me. The +1 other one is you exile the top card in the library. If it is red, you may play it this turn. That one gets a little used less. Typically, if the games are going longer, I tend to play that more, just creating options, especially when I'm, you know, looking for opportunities to navigate past whatever defenses they have established. So yes, do like Chandra. Honestly, would probably go 2 Chandras. I would like her to come out a little bit more because all the focus. You know, that's pretty usual. Excuse the yawning. That's pretty usual. Planeswalker's out, all the focus is on the Planeswalker. Get the Planeswalker. So, very true for Chandra. Maybe we'd run 2. Right now we're only running 1. Twinferno. So we're on our 2 drops now. So I had announced we're going to 3 drops back at Squee. So 3 drops. Squee, Reckless, Stormseeker, and Chandra, Dress to Kill. Now we're in the 2 drop spot. First one's a spell. They're all spells. An instant. Twinferno. And I really have developed a taste for this card ever since playing it in Sealed and Draft and being able to do some dirty double striking madness and some copying. There's been an occasional copying play that has worked quite well. This card is a game-ending card. You know, attacking in with 2 creatures. They have 1 blocker. I have 4 open mana. This and Furious Bellow, they're done. That was, you know, 8 damage done on that turn. On turn, you know, could be turn 4 at that point. And that's what I mean by Twinferno's inclusion here. I have 2 copies because of that, the silliness that can come from it. Sometimes it doesn't feel good when they've been doing a good job wiping your board and, you know, you're drawing Twinferno with no creatures to use it on. And it doesn't bode well to copy your burn spells that are as cheap or cheaper. Honestly, it's in emergency situations, Shieldred, I have Lightning Strike and Twinferno. I'm going to copy the Lightning Strike to get Shieldred out of the picture. You know, I didn't really like that. Spent 4 mana to do it. It was kind of expensive. There are some cheaper removal spells in other colors, but in red you're a little more strapped. You're dealing direct damage, and usually, you know, for 3 damage, you're talking about 2 mana CMC. Excuse the yawns. So, moving on. That's why we like Twinferno, but moving on from Twinferno, Lightning Strike. Classic. You know, this has ended a lot of games. They think they're okay, which, you know, if they're realizing the deck they're playing against, I don't know why they think they're okay taking themselves down to 3 when they're making some of their block selections. You know, maybe they're banking on the fact that I don't have it in hand currently, Lightning Strike. But, you know, as soon as they give me the opportunity, I hit the untap step, we're going right into casting that Lightning Strike in their face, and usually that does clear up a lot of the games. Also, it's very helpful after an attack phase, after a combat phase, rather. You could finish off a bigger creature that blocked some of your smaller guys. You do run the chance of hoping that they block. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they know you're up to something. Woo! Excuse me. But that is a helpful way, because as far as removal for creatures greater than 3, you know, it's a big gap for us. That is one of the weak spots. You know, this is a 2-drop doing 3 damage. Our next damage level is 5 damage, and that's from Burn Down the House, and that's a 5 mana CMC, convert mana cost. So you're a little naked between that. So you usually have to get creative in managing those situations. Moving on to Kami's Flare. So that plays off our modified synergy. It actually, you know, works out fairly well. If I have it in hand with a Lightning Strike, I keep that in mind. You know, I might hold the Kami's Flare if I don't have a modified creature yet. You know, I might have Thundering Raiju coming up. Or, you know, if it's there, I'm going to use that over Lightning Strike if I'm looking at a creature, because then bada bing, bada boom, 2 in the face on top of that, that makes that spell ridiculously valuable. Going on, got a creature here, Goro, Disciple of Ryusai. So I honestly, this card is really just filling in a spot for me at the 2-drop spot. I know there's this mythic rare from Midnight Hunt, bloodthirsty adversary maybe. I didn't have it at the time of making this deck. I am trying it in my best of 3 version that I'm going to try and do for this month. See if I can get back to Mythic with best of 3 only, using a different version of the deck, or maybe fine-tuning the deck with some alterations. But anyway, Goro, he's filling a spot. He's kind of under Predator. He doesn't come in with haste on his own, but he has an activated ability you can use to give all creatures haste. So that's nice for himself and other creatures. He also has a secondary ability, which is contingent on the modified creatures. So if you have any modified creatures that are attacking, you can spend 5. I think it's like 2 red and 3. 2 red and 3, yep. To create a 5/5 flying dragon token. Not attacking with haste, you can just create it. I've could count on my hand how many times I've done that, or my opponent has allowed me to be in that specific situation. It's a very specific situation, but I can also tell you I've never lost any of those games where I've been able to resolve that. So I'm getting into the habit of looking for that line more, trying to see if I could sneakily get that. I might put a rabbit battery on Goro, and then next turn, I'm looking to attack with him when I have the 5 mana. And that seems to be nice, because a 5/5 flying dragon token, you know, that's something they're going to have to deal with. Moving on, we have Furious Bellow, which is just great for, you know, catching them on unsuspecting blocks. You know, the +3, that's a lot, so maybe they're thinking they're safe with a decent gap between the power and toughness on their blocker and my attacker. Hit him with the Furious Bellow. They lost the blocker. I keep the attacker because of the first strike, and you get a scry 1. I like that to just help figure out mana. You know, sometimes if I'm struggling to get from 3 to 4 or get to 4 or 5, I'm looking for that next mountain. Someone's dragging something out in the hallway, so that's always helpful. For the 2 mana drop, Cathartic Pyre. Why is that important? Cathartic Pyre is important for choosing one of 2 different options. You can deal 3 damage. You can deal 3 damage to either a creature or a planeswalker, so that's nice because it's introducing the option of getting into a planeswalker. The other option, you can discard 2 cards and draw 2 more cards. Very helpful for filtering through bad hands, especially in early game. If I see that in hand and I'm looking at something that, you know, could turn out well, but depending on the draws, could put me in a bad position, I might play this on turn 3, you know, on their end step to help get me to where I want to be with having lands or just other options. If I'm having pump spells when I don't have creatures or things like that. That's why I keep Cathartic Pyre, and it is valuable. I value its presence highly. Up next, we have Sticky Fingers. So we're into the 1-drops now. So Sticky Fingers, I run 2 copies of Sticky Fingers, and that's an aura. It gives your creature menace, and when they deal combat damage to player, you get to create a treasure token. And when the enchanted creature dies, you draw a card. So for being a 1-drop, this card is phenomenal. So menace, that's evasion, that gets you around, get the damage in. Treasure token, ramp, like I'm playing some of those big spells pretty quick, and then when they're annoyed with my ramp, you know, depending on their situation, I feel like exile is becoming much more part of the meta, which is hurting the strategy. Or I should say, exile seems to be a bigger part of the meta at Mythic, but still, there's going to be some destroy target creature, and that does yield me a card, which is nice. This card isn't broken if I don't get an extra card on that, especially against blue. When it's returned target creature to hand, this card just goes directly to the graveyard. So that's a little annoying. Blue is probably the only matchup that this struggles against. And blue is just pretty annoying in my opinion. So we enjoy our red and playing our red. Anyway, going on. So up next we have Reinforced Ronin. So this is the first card that we run 4 of, and just because. Turn 1, deal 2 damage. You have 2 in hand. Turn 2, deal 4 damage. They're at 6, or excuse me, they're at 14 already on turn 2. So it deals you a lot of pressure pretty quick. It's annoying that you have to keep spending mana on it, but as soon as they have blockers, you have the ability to channel it. So I do tend to use that channel ability often to give me the options I need to now deal with their creatures. So this is a very good card to have, especially when you're, you know, on the play, or they don't have a creature to play turn 1, turn 2. Going on, play with fire. Oh, sorry, Rabbit Battery. Rabbit Battery is great because you give other creatures haste. It's another haster on the early game that's coming in for 1, and it has that looming threat of being able to give Atsushi that haste. Coming in, attack right away. 4 in the air, 5 in the air. It also gives +1/+1. And then it factors into the modified creature strategy, which is very effective for Kami's Flare, like we talked about. The Thundering Raiju. So it plays in that way, a little bit of a sub-theme. Not a big part of this deck, but still, it's fun that it plays. Then we'll go on to Play with Fire. I love Play with Fire in the early game, just helping sorting out what cards I'm going to be getting, especially if I'm not hitting the land draws if I'm looking for them. But also if I'm strapped looking for options, just also dealing damage, furthering you on your goal. You want to get them down to 0, it's doing it for you. I run 3 copies of that. I felt like 4 was a little annoying, so I did wind that back. 2 Phoenix Chicks, it's actually wound that down to 2, and getting them in the late game as a top deck wasn't fun, so if I got 1, that's fine, but if I'm getting multiple, and I already had multiple, I just didn't like that. I know that's probably true for Rabbit Battery, but Phoenix Chick is pretty linear. Rabbit Battery has some other versatility in the sense that I could buff my other creatures. Phoenix Chick, it really just comes out, it doesn't even act as a chump blocker because it can't block. It does have this graveyard ability that I don't usually use, because I'm attacking, I typically don't have the mana open. Maybe I'd have to look at that line more. It probably does exist more than I'm allowing it to, but I only do run 2 copies currently. And lastly, but not leastly, Humano faces Kakazan. The enchantment deals 1 off the rip. I've won many a games top decking this to get the last piece of damage. Turn 2 or step 2, I don't know, chapter 2, +1/+1 on the next target creature, or the next creature you cast this turn. That's the wonderful for, like I said, Shiv and Devastator, Phoenix Chick, Rabbit Battery sometimes, just getting it on the ground for 2, and then comes in as a 2/2. So just with haste. So then just another 2/2er with haste coming in as attack. So all for 1 mana. What a steal. So I run 3 of those. I found 4 felt like a little bit much, because this you have to cast a creature card, so I didn't want to rely on too many of these, but 3 felt like a reasonable place to go. So running that deck exactly how it was, I was able to get all the way up into Mythic. And I'll say it wasn't terribly hard, it wasn't too grindy. I would lose to blue, but I had a fair chance against everyone else. Not that many areas where you could really make big misplays. You do have to think about the sequence of your attacks and how to get that damage in and keep your attackers as best as possible. Also, one of the big ways that I try and play it is I try and also think about not spreading I try to spread out the resources. I try not to give them too good of a target that they want to destroy with single target removal. So if I have a buffed up Phoenix Chick with Sticky Fingers, I'm going to be giving a 1/1 counter to usually Kumano Kakazan, actually, are etchings of Kumano, the backside of this card. This card actually gets a lot of my attention because this card does nothing besides be a 2/2 attacker. So if I could actually buff it up, make it a little more annoying for them, I could actually maybe redivert some of their removal efforts. So talk to me about your thoughts. I know so many people won't like that there's only 1 card for a lot of the higher converted mana cost cards, but this deck is a lot of fun to play. You never know what you're going to get in that late game, as far as those higher costed creatures, but it makes it more fun for me, and I really do enjoy playing this deck. So that was our October month on Arena. We're going to try for November to do the same deck, maybe with some modifications, to actually get an idea on what we need in a sideboard for this deck by only playing best of 3s. So that's going to be our challenge. And also, Brothers War comes out this month. So we're going to find out what inclusions we're going to put into this deck based off of Brothers War, which I'm going to be doing some videos for Brothers War. We're going to talk through those cards and, figure it out. See you, nerds.